Welcome to this video. Population reduction, global cooling, and ice ages. Historical population reductions and human economic activity reductions significantly cooled the planet and even led to some of the most extreme ice ages in the course of human history. An over 1,000-year period called Bolling Allerod, just before the Younger Dryas, witnessed 3 waves of extreme cooling of the planet into an extreme ice age called the Younger Dryas. In North America, but also all over the world, cultures similar to the Clovis culture abruptly went extinct and as said 3 abrupt and subsequent cooling set in. Probably these Clovis cultures dominantly practiced slash and burning methods, which obviously destruct forests and emit carbon dioxide and cause degeneration of forest and soils and forest fires. We feature videos and podcasts about this extinction of the people that practice slash and burning methods before and in the Younger Dryas period and the subsequent cooling and why a supposed meteorite impact is not the reason for this extreme cooling. Media and consensus do not even consider population reduction as the cause of the cooling that led to the Younger Dryas Ice Age, probably because a meteorite impact theory is a more convenient explanation, or just a more successful narrative. Cooling through regeneration of forests and soils, or growing agroforests, without population reduction. This video and further videos and podcasts on dedicated channels will inform how climate change and other important threats can be solved without the need for a kind of forced or provoked population reduction that could follow disease X and/or a nuclear war and its consequential nuclear winter, eventually extending more than 10 years. The method we will claim here, that does not at all depend on population reduction, is once again fully evidenced and proven by at least 2 historical ice ages, of which the medieval Little Ice Age is the better known one. In the case of the medieval Little Ice Age, population reduction, caused by the plague, Yersinia pestis, cholera, etc., led to abandonment of traditional agriculture fields and the logical and involuntary subsequent, completely natural recovery of trees and forests on those fields, etc. This natural recovery of forests and soils caused the removal of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, CDR, and the sequestering in forests and soils, and the consequential cooling that led to the medieval Little Ice Age. You might wonder if recovery of forests and soils or the growing of enriched agroforest really is effective and sufficient to combat our global climate challenges, decline of biodiversity, extinction, perfect storm, etc. Of course it is, because it simply is the reversal of what according to consensus causes these climate challenges, etc., confirmed by research and science. Also, it is a natural and large-scale variant of what is called CDR, carbon dioxide removal, which is the objective of several prizes exactly to remove carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, overlooking the obvious, historical, and natural CDR. This massive CDR through growing and enriching agroforests will be illustrated later, including with numbers. Why is this method not already turned into a global action plan? Well, apart from an apparent lack of support, recognition, and funding of relevant research, and the consequent lack of understanding of enriching tropical and subtropical forests and soils, I let you draw further conclusions for yourself. If and while you would do so, please think about or remember the fact that business and power as usual, which includes many of the rich of the world, but also countries like Russia, etc., supposedly, do not understand how they could gain money and power with such an action plan. In the first place, there is no understanding because science was not able or willing to inform them, etc., of the clear potential and such an action plan. Of course, they could gain money and power with it, but they can make more or for them easier or more controllable money with large-scale, unsustainable and emitting, traditional monoculture agriculture of which they think to have more control, including over prices, commercialization, use for power or in a political context, etc. Especially so after prices of food have risen, because of eventual shortages that are consequential of their approach, but also the geopolitical tensions it creates, etc. Further, we have to keep in mind that the simple planting of trees, without any enrichment with organic material or humus, even in large areas, will not result in any significant removal of carbon dioxide, CDR, especially if the simple planting is done in non-tropical and non-subtropical regions, which have the largest potential for enrichment and sequestering. Enrichment is essential in certain cases, but enrichment can be obtained by methods as simple as regular pruning, thinning or recycling, compostation, also when only on the spot. The input of humus or compost produced with the input of urban organic waste, which is additional sequestering of CO2, would accelerate the enrichment of the forests and agroforests. Enrichment in the forests and agroforests themselves typically and cumulatively sequesters carbon in soils, forests, and agroforests. Enrichment of forests and soils will be explained in other videos and podcasts. In the former century, the subject of agroforests did get attention and research got some fundings, FAO, but it was handled and rather seen in a social context that has other objectives, and when agroforest gets attention today, it again is mostly seen in the same social context, which in fact distracts from its CDR and restoring of climate function. Until now, in the agroforest context, there never was emphasis on the kind of enrichment as the Amazon Amerindians very actively practiced, and that is necessary for significant and sufficient sequestering. The Amazon Amerins totally emphasized on the recycling of all organic waste and/or the making of humus and transforming it or incorporating it into Terra Preta, Amazon dark earth or AD, and this inside of the Amazon forest, which they successfully transformed into enriched agroforests. Until the last decade, the Amazon forest was considered a natural forest. The Amazon Amerins enriched the Amazon forest by using and creating patterns and processes of smaller agroforests, which after a certain number of cycles, time, would cover all or most, 4% is proven, of the Amazon forest with Terra Preta soils. Only such areas with Terra Preta soils could sustain these dense populations with their alternative and sustainable forms of urbanization that are proven today also by modern technologies, LiDAR. These dense populations of Amerindians lived relatively sedentary lives and cultures, just like the Tsimane in Bolivia still do today. Hunting and gathering was and is the exception. These Tsimane, Amazon Amerindians, etc. live from their crops and products grown and produced in the agroforest based on the Terra Preta and certain forest tree species, Brazil nuts, and or in the midst of or under the trees, manioc or cassava roots, which is their main ingredient of their diets. Obviously, their food was and is minimally heated, processed, and clearly organically produced. Almost obviously, all products provided by Enriched Agroforest are organic, because fertilizers and pesticides are not needed and not efficient in forests. The unsatisfactory result of simple tree planting, without significant enrichment, is used by consensus to conclude that nothing regarding trees, forests, and soils will cause any meaningful CDR. But, as explained later, certain ice ages were clearly caused by regenerating forests and soils forest, so appropriate research, or rather looking into the past research, is urgent. I, the author of this video and podcast, was involved in such fundamental and large-scale research for 16 years, and the result was exactly the result we need to solve climate change and the perfect storm. At the time of the research, preservation and natural regeneration of tropical forests was the objective of the research, but as a side effect, the removal of carbon dioxide was of the order of 35 billion of tons a year. If it were applied in already degenerated parts of the Amazon forest or in tropical forests or enriched agroforests of the same area as the Amazon forest in the tropical and subtropical regions of the world. Numbers and more details will follow in the next and other videos and podcasts. For now, business and power as usual understands that land grabbing and eventually exploitation with large-scale monoculture provides more money and or power, this independent of its potential to sequester carbon and solve the perfect storm through an enrichment-related action plan that results in CDR, sequestering of carbon. Usually business and money, as usual, makes most money acting in line with the cycle of greed and fear, which both can be manipulated. It needs some time for the critical mass to swing from one to the other side, in cycles. In this actual case of increasing threats, the swing obviously is from greed to fear. You probably heard that the most rich and powerful people on this planet and countries like Russia acquired immense patches of land, mostly agricultural land, in the case of Russia by invading Ukraine, in the case of the rich and powerful, also including China, through acquisition all over the world, but probably also in Ukraine, Poland, but surely many other countries all over the world. Also keep in mind that the territory of Ukraine is considered an important part of the historical breadbasket and occupies 604,000 square kilometers of some of the most fertile and productive areas. or 5.7% of the European territory. Instead of grain for bread, Ukraine today produces sunflower meal, oil, and seed, and became the world's top exporter of sunflower meal and oil. Ukraine also is the second largest country in Europe after Russia, with a large portion of fertile land that is also suitable for large-scale production methods. Other European countries are obviously smaller and less productive, cold, dry, or mountainous, etc. The so-called developed European countries also got and still get rich by feeding selected animals in controlled environments that produce products with important added value like milk, meat, eggs, and their derived products, etc., with imported products without additional value coming from countries like Brazil, soy, corn, etc., as well as from what were breadbaskets countries, like Ukraine. Obviously, large-scale monoculture agriculture and the whole processing into highly processed foods emits more and an important part of the global carbon dioxide emissions, makes certain developed countries of the northern hemisphere richer and also more powerful, all at the cost of increased emissions, especially to and in the northern hemisphere. Interests could exist to not change this situation and to not solve our threats, and that could be the reason that no action plan exists, is made public, or so it seems. This is the case and the barrier for such an action plan. This while nature clearly laid out such an action plan by means of ice ages and periods with globally much lower carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. All the above facts are firmly registered and proven in soils, recent fossils, including pollen, etc. Time for you to know what is going on and how you can affordably acquire your own safe haven and eventually generate a certain income out of your own safe haven. All this independent of what is going on in the rest of the world and the unfortunate seemingly unavailability of the proposed action plan, or any adequate action plan proposed by others than us for that matter. Once you feel you have your own safe haven prepared, you can more freely choose to know about and participate or not in such action plan laid out, without cost and loss of production, by nature, and this for centuries and millennia. In case of interest in this action plan laid out by nature and successfully executed by our human ancestors, please see the following video or podcast and our video and podcast channels in English, Portuguese, etc. Our videos and podcasts are subtitled in several other languages. This video or podcast is followed up by a related one that provides the numbers that enriched agroforests can sequester out of the atmosphere, CDR. Thank you for watching this video or listening to this podcast.